Hello, everyone, and welcome to a bit of a sit-down, I guess, fireside chat. That's what sometimes they call this interview with CaptainFlowers to talk about some exciting things that are happening in his life. Of course, this coverage, as always, is brought to you by Alienware. So first off, Flowers, you had a pretty exciting announcement that came out, I think it was at the end of last week, right?
Yeah. Yep. It was something that's been in the works for a while now, and I finally got everything behind the scenes in order and in place to go ahead and make the announcement. I was waiting until I had the professional email and all of that ready to go and link to things. But for anybody who did not see it, for people who aren't on Twitter, I am officially a freelancer now in 2021. I am no longer salaried with Riot. Instead, I am on a day rate for whichever shows I am a part of, whatever behind the scenes meetings, days, and content filming. Obviously, that's a day rate as well. But outside of that, I'm free to do my own third party stuff and extracurricular activities to whatever those might be.
So I want to talk to you more about that in a little bit. I'm planning on to kind of just talking to you about a whole lot of stuff. But
Okay.
for those that don't know, before we get to that point in the interview, what does it mean for the fans that are watching you every week, or should they be worried about this? I mean, what are the implications?
So that's one of the biggest questions that I always got. Like a bunch of people would have panicked responses when I mentioned freelancing because they think it means you're not with the LCS anymore and you're going off to do random ads and commercials and stuff for everything is not the LCS. But that's not the case. I'm still working with the LCS on a regular basis every single week. I still have a very good working relationship with Riot. This wasn't a thing where Riot looked at me and were like, hey, we're moving you to freelance. Or this wasn't me trying to strong arm Riot and say, hey, I'm not working with you anymore. I'm going freelance now, like it or not. They were very cooperative and just saying, hey, yeah, whatever you want to do with it, whether it's staying on salary or whether you want to go to freelance, let us know. We'll work with you to get this set up in the best way possible so that you can continue being a part of LCS and doing whatever you think is best for you. So Riot's been nothing but helpful the entire time through making this transition. I will continue to be a part of the LCS every single week. It's not going to be a thing where you only see me for the first couple of weeks and then I disappear. LCS for regular season, spring and summer is going to look exactly like it has previously. A lot of people have likened my situation to what they saw with Shocks when Shocks went freelance over in Europe. And there's been like multiple weeks where she hasn't been doing stuff with the LEC, where she's taken on other projects and she's worked with things like CSGO and other events. I don't pay attention to a lot of stuff outside of the League of Legends community, so I'm not sure all of the specifics on what she's worked, but I know that she's departed from League of Legends to do some other stuff and not been on the LEC for that. But I'll still be working with Riot on a weekly basis doing the LCS. One thing I will put in there is that the contracts for MSI and Worlds are negotiated separately. I wanted to make sure that was part of the details for my contract. So my agent went ahead and took care of that with them. So MSI and Worlds are, I will have more news to share about those once those are negotiated, once we get close to those events. Those are not guaranteed yet. So I don't want to go ahead and give people a bunch of false promises that I can't back up just yet. I still would love to be a part of those events, but those are negotiated separately. I wanted it to be that way. And right now, I can tell you with 100% certainty, I will be on the LCS in spring all the time. I will be on the LCS in summer all the time. I'm not going anywhere no time soon.
So what I'm hearing is if we don't see you at MSI or Worlds, Riot just doesn't value you as much as
Oh,
they
no,
should.
I am not touching this question with a 10-foot pole. I'm not doing it. My hands are in the air.
Well, I hope they throw a ton of money at you to get you to those events. But I I want to get more into the reason for all this and what's been going on with you lately over the course of the interview. But sort of looking at some of the interviews that I did with Dash and some other folks, Medic, I thought maybe we'd have a chance to kind of dive in and talk a lot about sort of your background, because so many people I think know of you from the cast, and you've alluded to like being a country boy and stuff like that, and a lot of people don't, I think, know all the stuff about you. So I was thinking we could talk a little bit about that. So actually, it'd be great to know. I think you're from Ohio, right?
Yes, I am from small town Ohio. My parents actually don't live within the town limits of any town. We live out beyond that in between two smaller towns. One of them has a few thousand people, and one of them has a few hundred and one stoplight.
Wow.
So we're
So you grew up. It's like an unincorporated area. You really grew up out in no offense, but kind of the middle of nowhere. It sounds like, because there's nothing around you.
especially compared to what California is and what people expect in Santa Monica and LA and places like that, it's a very rural area. Yes, there's like if you walk out onto the porch of my parents' house and you look out, the entire area across the road is just nothing but a giant cornfield.
Yeah.
And
So wait, were you as I'm imagining this and being sort of not connected to a town, were you growing up on a farm, like a literal farm?
No. There were a lot of my friends growing up were parts of farm families. We were not. My dad worked at a state park golf course for years and years of years, eventually like rising up through that. He was a superintendent of that for multiple years. And then he also had his own landscaping business, which he owned and operated. And so whereas most of my friends, in their teenage years, their teenage jobs would be working on the farm for their families, mine was working with the landscaping business with my dad. So moving bags of fertilizer from the truck to the barn, or going out and using the leaf blower to clean off the sidewalk after we got done doing somebody's yard, moving wheelbarrows of mulch back and forth. All skills that don't really play much into casting, to be quite honest. But yeah, it was a very rural beginning.
So, how big was the school that you were going to?
The high school that I graduated from had 700 total students, and my graduating class was 180.
Okay.
So not super small.
Yeah, not down to like that 20-person situation.
Yeah, it's not like that, but it was significantly smaller than some of the stories that I heard from my friends who went to school in bigger cities, who had like, oh yeah, my graduating class was 900 students. I'm like, that's more than my entire school, dude.
Yeah. So did you play sports or anything? I feel like you've got like a sports vibe about you, like maybe you did in high school.
I did. So when I was a teenager, I did martial arts for 5.5 years.
Okay.
I started learning karate when I was about 11 years old. I stayed doing karate until I was almost about 17, when high school stuff was just starting to take up too much of my time. And I had to make a choice of, do I want to essentially have no free time and keep doing the karate thing, or drop the karate thing and have more of my own decisions to make. So I did that for about close to 6 years. I am a first-degree black belt in karate. I was able to accomplish that. So that's pretty cool. That's always one that gets people to go, oh, no way. So that's always a fun party conversation. But that one is what I did throughout most of my like early adolescent teenage years. And then once I got to my junior year in high school, I started running track and cross country when track wasn't going on, staying in good shape for that. I wasn't that good at cross country because it's a lot of running, but it was a good thing to keep in shape and like hang out with your friends. And track we did pretty well in. So it was just, that was what I competed in, and I had a lot of fun with those.
That's awesome. What point did you start playing video games as a kid, and what were you playing in the early days?
Oh man, ever since I was just the tiniest little dude, I love video games. The first video game I remember playing was the original side-scrolling Rayman on Sega Saturn. And when I was little, I was not a Chad. I was afraid of the water in video games because I couldn't swim, and I thought if my guy drowned, I was going to drown. It freaked me out. And so I remember the third level in Rayman is the first one where there's water. And so I had my dad beat that for me. And then afterwards, I was like, hey, beat the next one. And so it became a nightly thing where my dad would get home after working an 8-hour shift at the golf course and then putting in a couple more hours to get things running with the business. The last thing he would do before he would like go to sleep is he would play a couple hours of Rayman, and I would watch him. Imagine like the precursor to the precursor to the precursor of streaming. Just dad playing a video game, I'm the one viewer watching him every night. And that game was hard. Like Rayman 1 is not an easy game. It is a very punishing platformer with a lot of ways to make the player pull their hair out. And my dad managed to persist through that game for a couple years and finally beat the damn thing. And that's always one of my fond memories about being a little kid, is watching my dad play Rayman 1 for a couple hours every night. And so that was my introduction to video games. And from there, after the Sega Saturn, we had a PlayStation 1 and then a PlayStation 2. And then after PlayStation 2 was kind of when I met my nerdy friends in junior high who taught me about the wonders of PC gaming. So at that point, I got my first PC that was capable of playing games. I played a lot of Age of Empires 2 with those guys. That was our big multiplayer LAN party game. It was just Age of Empires 2 going on in there. From Age of Empires 2, I got introduced to the RTS genre, which led me to Warcraft 3. man, I put so many thousands of hours into Warcraft 3. I love that game, which of course, Warcraft 3 leads you down the road to MOBA, which leads you to the world of Dota. And from Dota, I found League of Legends when it came out. I've been playing League of Legends ever since it released in winter of 2009 and got out of beta. And the rest kind of is history.
Was your family and your parents okay with you playing all these games? Because I know a lot of people have had sort of mixed experiences with like pushback from family on like, oh, you're playing too many video games.
Well, when I was a kid, up until I was about, I think this rule lasted until I was 16 or 17. I was only allowed to play 1 hour of video games a day. Okay. That was my mom's rule. I was allowed to play 1 hour a day. Around when I got 14 or 15, I think she upped it to 2. But there was a hard limit. And also back when I was in karate, like when I was training for the higher belt test, which also had like a physical fitness requirement to them, my mom literally drew up a workout regimen that was like 200 push-ups, 200 jumping jacks, 200 crunches, 200 squats, 5 minutes on the bag, practice for 30 minutes on all your forms, no video games before that, no matter what.
Yeah.
So you had to do that every day, and then you got to do the video games. So there were definitely limits on it when I was younger. Like I say, once I got towards the end of high school, she just sort of relaxed with those because she realized, hey, once you're done with high school, she's kind of not.
Yeah. It's like
more once you go off to college, it's like,
right.
I'm not going to go to college and be like, well, that was my 1 hour. Oh well. But there were limits on that.
Did you go to college?
I did. I graduated with 2 degrees.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So which degrees?
I have degrees in political science and criminal justice with a focus on pre-law.
See, this is amazing because here's the thing, and I was going to ask you about this. On the broadcast, you love to play the dumb guy. Like, you play this up so much. You always, and in talking to you, I know that you are a very smart, thoughtful person throughout these years, and so it's funny to me because you always are like, okay, Kobe, I tried to be smart about this, and then I realized that I can't be, so you're the smart guy. Go ahead, I'll just talk fast later. And I'm wondering, like, why do you do this? Do you enjoy it as part of like the character? Is it nice because it just forces whoever you're casting with to do the heavy lifting on the analysis? I mean, what's sort of the strategy? Why do you do it?
So I think it's fun. I guess I'm sort of at a weird crossroads where I don't fit into any of the stereotypes super well because I love going out and partying with my friends and going to clubs and bars and stuff like that. But I also enjoy nerdy stuff. Man, I mean, I love video games. I have entire notepad files that are nothing but 60 lines of equations comparing damage types in Warframe to see which one's 2% better. I love getting into that kind of stuff, but I also love just doing the stereotypical Chad crap, right?
Yeah.
So playing into that is just a lot of fun for me, especially because the honesty that the Chad stuff originates from is the fact that I am not a big brain League of Legends player. At my peak, I was Diamond 1, 75 LP. I never was Challenger. I was never one of those guys who thought about going pro because I was good enough. I was really good at Skarner, and I was really good at solo queue. I knew how to play solo queue. I knew how to take advantage of someone who very obviously was having a bad game and tilting and just ult them on cooldown over and over again and make them rage quit and get my win. Right? I don't know draft advantages versus macro advantages and those kinds of things. Of course, I've learned a lot about that over my last 4 years here, like doing professional casting. But one thing that I always try to do is be very honest with myself, about what my strengths and weaknesses both are. And I know that deep analytical understanding of the game is not a strength of mine.
Yeah.
So just sort of playing into that, hamming that up a little bit, letting my co-caster shine and flex those brain muscles, that's fun to me.
So, okay, where did you graduate from, by the way?
I went to a smaller university in Ohio. I usually don't share names and stuff in these kinds of things because people get weird about trying to.
So I mean, some people are very proud of their alma mater. You know what I mean? Or they like. Yeah. So I never know. But if you want to keep it,
I generally never share school names, hometown name, or anything like that. Yeah. I just in general because people get weird on the internet.
Yeah, I understand.
So I will say it's like I didn't go to any of the big like Ohio State or huge schools like that. It was a smaller private college in Ohio.
So okay, we don't need to go too far down this road, but I'm a little surprised to hear political science and criminal justice because I would not have taken like. You are pretty low key about any kind of like political stances. I've never really had any conversations with you about like political structures, or like, I think especially out here in LA, a lot of people end up talking about the latest news and the government and sort of policy and all that. And I've never had that type of discussion with you. Is that something you still think about? Why did you choose these majors?
So the majors I chose initially, one of the things that I was contemplating after going to college was, so I was not one of those people who knew what he wanted to do coming out of high school, right? I went to college and I was like, I still don't know what's going on. College was a time for me where I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do with life. And I felt like I was surrounded by people that all had all these grand schemes of like, they were going to do this for 2 years and then make sure you take a summer internship. Then another year you double dip into this major with another summer internship after that one. And then get a job, and then within 5 years you get a promotion. And I swear to God, man, it was like everybody else was playing with the strategy guide, and I had just barely popped the disc out of the case and just started playing the game. I felt so lost. And so political science and criminal justice was something that I was good at. It was something that I picked up very easily. And going into the law field was something that I could see myself doing after college. Now,
like as a lawyer, were you thinking about being a lawyer?
That's one thing that I was thinking about. Like I said, I graduated top of my class, both of those degrees. I finished with a 3 point, almost a 9. It was like an 8.8 or an 8.9 GPA on both of those. So I had the good grades. I did stuff, but at the end of the day, academia is very much suited for some people and very much not for others. Even though I am good at school, I do not like school.
Yeah,
it is a mental battle for me to have to constantly organize all this stuff and papers and reports and tests and all of it. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't completely burnt out by the end of 4 years in college.
Right.
And so after 4 years in college, I was just like, I can't do this for another 3 years. I won't be able to take care of myself. Absolutely not. And I went home and I was like, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. And my dad told me, he was like, well, while you don't have anything else that you know what you're going to do, you're always welcome to work for the business. He was like, I know it's not glorious. It's not big shiny name in lights, but there's always mulch to be moved and fertilizer that needs stacked up in the barn. So I was like,
this is like a movie. I love this. Like you go off and you're like thinking about going off to law school and to pass the bar exam, but your passion isn't there. You go back to your small town, or not even town, your house out in between two small towns, and your dad's like, well, son, you can always work for the business. It's like, this is something that I would see on the big screen. So it's funny to hear.
I'm glad it's so endearing from a third person point of view, because I tell you what, man, back in the day, after all my friends had those plans after graduation, and I just went home and I was doing the same stuff that I was doing back as a 15-year-old, I felt like a freaking loser, man.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to reflect on it now and see like how incredible this sort of the story is. Yeah,
now it is, but back then I was trying to figure everything out, and I was just drawing nothing but blanks the whole time, just trying to figure out where I wanted things to go at that point in life, and I did not know. And then the turnaround point was, so back in college. So remember, I graduated high school in spring of 2009, started college in fall of 2009. League of Legends came out in winter of 2009.
Yeah.
So pretty much League of Legends was only out while I was in college. So me and a bunch of my college friends, we all played League of Legends together. It was one of our main hobbies, where everybody would get back from classes, you'd hit them up, be like, bro, you done with classes for the day? Let's play. And so it got to the point where the first year it was out, I was bronze, all my friends were bronze, we all sucked, everybody was terrible. But then as time went on, I got really dedicated to this game. I swear, if I wasn't in class, Travis, I was playing League of Legends. There was sometimes if I knew the class that day wasn't going to be important,
no more 1 hour limits for mom to hold you back.
No, exactly. I was free. I was unleashed. And so I'm playing League of Legends all the time. I got better at it. And then so by the time it gets to the end of our senior year, most of my friends are still like bronze and silver, but I'm like, I can't remember if it was still senior year or if it was right after senior year that I finally got diamond for the first time. I felt awesome about it because it was season 4 somewhere in there that I got diamond. So it probably would have been towards the end of the year. I spent some of the year platinum, some diamond, whatever. The point is, I was a lot higher elo than the rest of my friends. And so they like to watch me play to be like, oh, bro, this looks so much cooler than my games. People are actually buying the right item. This is crazy. And so it was sort of like another one of those throwbacks of like the precursor of streaming. I remember sitting here on my crappy computer playing League of Legends, which, by the way, I had to jury rig an extra fan to the side of the laptop using a pulley contraption made out of rubber bands, paper clips, and socks. Otherwise, the laptop would overheat and crash after 2 games. So I'm sitting there on this garbage laptop playing League of Legends, and my friends are just pulling up milk crates or boxes or plastic chairs or whatever, sitting next to me watching me. Like 6 or 7 of my friends just sitting and watching the game. And so that was kind of the first League of Legends streaming that I ever did, even though it wasn't really streaming. And it, you know, all my friends were fans of it. They're like, "Oh, bro, we love watching you play the game." And it was always just kind of a thing that they joked around. They were like, "Why don't you try to do something in video game world as a job?" I was like, "You guys are smoking something. I don't know where these suggestions are coming from. This is ridiculousness. There's no way this would ever work." And then eventually my dad started saying the same thing. He was like, "You like this video game stuff so much." He was like, "I've seen you play it so much. You got to be good at it by now. Is there something you can do with that?" And so it was one of those things where obviously, you know, I didn't have any delusions of being a pro.
Yeah.
So I was trying to figure it out. And then people kept bringing up the casting thing because, you know, friends remembered me hanging out, talking about the game to them as I'm playing it. They're like, "Well, did you ever try doing that? Like what Freak and Kobe and those guys do?" I was like, "There's no way I could do that, man. I don't even own a suit." And so I eventually decided to give it a shot. It was summer of 2015, was the very first time I ever casted a game of League of Legends. I picked one of my high elo friends off of my friends list. I think it was like a Diamond 1, Diamond 2 type of game. And I just spectated it. I recorded it on OBS, I think. Never streamed it. And then I just watched it back. And the first month was just me doing that. I casted games to myself for a month before I let anybody else watch them because I thought it was terrible.
Well, I want to get into this a little bit and learn a little bit about how you got into all this. But a couple things. One, I still love the idea that there's a version of you in an alternate universe where you became a lawyer and you're out instead of like casting, you're like, "Your Honor, my defendant is," well, you know, "my client." That is fantastic to imagine you sort of delivering these oratory arguments instead of
I was pretty good at it.
Yeah, I imagine. I did mock trial in high school and
oh, no kidding,
really enjoyed it, and so I can sort of see the fun that you would have had. I think the other thing I have a question on is, by the time League of Legends started, did you ask your dad anytime you had to like go gank through the river to do that for you? Because I understand you said you were really afraid of water in video games, and that's you had him play that for you. So I don't know if like
no, I mean
that you'd gotten past that point.
Okay. I mean, the difference is League of Legends came out when I was 19, and Rayman 1, we were playing it when I was like 5.
Okay.
So during those 14 years, I was able to overcome my fear of drowning in a video game.
Okay, I'm glad to hear it.
Fortunately, Dad never had to do the river games.
You don't get these flashbacks sometimes when you're on Skarner and you're going down near Baron?
There's a reason I never take water walking.
Well, okay, so you mentioned that you were trying to figure out if you were going to cast. You said you first started doing it in 2015. What's the timeline on this then? Because you graduated, I assume around what, 2014 or so? 2013?
2013, yeah.
2013?
I graduated in spring of 2013. So then I went home, and so for the rest of 2013 and 2014, I'm kind of just doing the landscaping thing, trying to figure out what I want to do. 2015 rolls around. At this point, I feel like I'm in a total rut. It's been a year and a half. I'm no closer to figuring out anything I want to do than anything else. And so summer of 2015, I'm thinking about the casting thing that everybody keeps telling me to try, and I'm like, okay, let's give it a shot. And so, like I said, we do like a month of just watching my own stuff back and listening to it. And after a month, I'm like, okay, this is at a passable level. I don't think that I'm God's gift to a microphone or anything like that, but I think that this is solid. I would listen to this and not immediately mute the stream. That was my mark for letting somebody else listen to it, is can I listen to this and not immediately think I would rather mute and listen to music?
And were you I was just going to ask, were you following esports at this time? Like, had you been watching all the games and watching LCS and all that stuff?
I had been an LCS fan since back in season 1.
Okay.
So like
LCS didn't exist in season 1.
Well, you know what I mean.
Fact check here in the
interview.
Yeah,
I know you're fact checking. Yeah, since the season 1 championship, which was not a Worlds because it didn't involve the entire world of competition yet, because League of Legends wasn't big enough.
The season 1 finals. I feel like that's when a lot of people
versus AAA.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been following it since all the way back then. So I had been uh, watching. I had been a fan of League of Legends since that whole time, not just as a player, but like watching the esports scene and all that. So the first thing I ever casted after I decided that I wasn't mute worthy is I went on the forums because I didn't know what to do. Because that's the other thing is although I had watched esports and played League of Legends, it's not like I was super involved in the League of Legends community, like the core of it, with the names that people knew in the day, like Freak and Cutie Pie and Odd One and Dyrus and like all these old school. It's not like I was in tune with all that the entire time. I was a guy who only hit diamond after playing 4 seasons. I was definitely not a league.
But so you didn't know, you weren't familiar with those names, or you were?
No, I mean I knew them, but I guess the way that I should have worded this is I didn't know them personally.
Right, yeah. You were just watching, consuming the stuff the same way like any Diamond 1 LCS fan would be watching.
I was a fan. Yeah. That's all I was. So the point that I was trying to make with this is that I didn't have connections or any knowledge about how any of it worked because I didn't know anybody who had actually walked in those shoes before. And so when I got to the point where I was like, okay, let's give this a shot, I was like, wait a second. I had no idea what I was supposed to do now.
Right. There's no pathway.
No, there's not. And honestly, amateur esports is still like that. Like there's no pipeline. It's not like going to college and getting a degree and then having some set steps that you're supposed to take. So I was just like, okay, let's think about this logically for a second. Where would people post if they need a cast? I was like, let's go to the forums because the forums were still open back in 2015. And so I go on there and I open up general discussion and I open up esports and I open up looking for group and anything that I think someone might vaguely post something about casting in. And I find a thing that ended up being a tournament being put on by these guys. You could tell they were a real top-tier production, Travis, because it was 20 minutes before the start time and they forgot they needed a caster. Well, hey, I was just starting out. I didn't have no standards. I was like, hey, you know what, fellas, sign me up. They're like, do you have any experience? I was like, I've casted them myself for a month. They're like, sure, why not?
Yeah.
You're here. You're alive. Get in there. So the first thing I ever casted was this tournament for 8 viewers, 5 of which were the guys organizing it. But you know what? People liked it. Right. There were 2 or 3 people in chat, but they were like, hey, caster's pretty good. So I was like, all right, let's find more of this to do. And from there, I ended up searching around on the forums and on Reddit looking for more of like a regular gig. Because that was the problem, is so many of these things, forum tournaments or anything like that, they'd be a one-off. You'd have something to do for a weekend, and then all of a sudden you're back to nothing and you don't know where to go. So I eventually found a Reddit community after like another month or so called House Party 5v5. I believe it was around August or September of 2015 that I started doing stuff with House Party 5v5. And they weren't huge by any means. Like compared to the amateur communities that exist today, House Party was pretty small. Their viewership on average would be somewhere between 60 to 80. And for their playoffs, they would have like 100, 120 maybe. So very modest community. But that's a lot bigger than anything I had ever done up until that point. And so I was regularly casting with House Party. They had games every weekend. Their motto was LCS for the rest of us. It was, they had 2 different leagues running, one of which was their no rank limit on it league, where all the teams were usually somewhere between Diamond 5 and Diamond 1. And then there was their like Academy League, which was capped for like silver and gold players.
Yeah.
So I was casting with them every week. And then there was one fateful weekend where it was the opening tournament. And I still remember this. It was an opening tournament to a new season because they had 3 seasons. They had 4 seasons per year. A season lasted 3 months. And this season, there was a team called Syndicate. And where I said most teams were normally Diamond 5 to Diamond 1, I'm talking usually you would have a couple Diamond 5s, a D4, a D3, maybe one D2 or D1 player. Syndicate was Challenger, Master, 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 Diamond 1. And nobody even came close to them. Like, holy moly, man. It was not a contest when these guys played a game. The only question you would ask is did it take them at least 20 minutes to win?
Right.
They were that far above everybody else. And so there was one game in the opening part of the new season. Syndicate was going up against a team called Wario's Warriors, which was very much just a meme team of bros that were all around Diamond 5. One of them was Platinum 2. And they were just there to have a good time. And Wario's Warriors is playing against Syndicate. Syndicate's going for the Baron. They're ahead in the game. Wario's Warriors loses a couple of their guys. And then they win a team fight against Syndicate 3 versus 5 at Baron. And that goes on to be the only game that Syndicate loses that entire season, including best of series and playoffs. And I lost my mind at that Baron play, just going completely nuts. The name of the video is Total Turnaround of Baron. CaptainFlowers goes berserk. And it's still up on YouTube. And it still gets linked all the time in threads about me, because that was the thread that got Riot's attention.
Poke at these guys. GP ulti lands. Baron down to about a quarter of its health. Here comes the Clark. Here comes the potential cleanup. It's going to be Clark able to find Noided, able to find Thesis. Notorious, you're in trouble too. He's going to melt. Amazon looking for even more damage. This is going to be the 3v5. Syndicate gets annihilated. Amazon looking for the last one. That's Wario's Warriors showing up huge.
I remember the guy who ran House Party, he had clipped that, and he sent me a message in, so that occurred in like December. And then later on, it was around, yeah. So it was around late March or early April that he hits me up and he says, hey, just remembered I still have this clip from a couple months ago of you doing that crazy Baron fight. Can I put this on Reddit? Because since it's now in April, that December season had ended. Yeah. The next season's about to start, and whenever one of their seasons started up, they always wanted to make a Reddit post on the main subreddit to try to draw more attention. So he was like, I want to use this to draw some attention.
It's like a promotional piece, yeah.
Yeah, just pretty much a hype clip. Say, hey, here's what we got. And I was like, you're going to get 20 upvotes, and then it's going to die in Rising, but sure, go ahead. And overnight, that video got 250,000 views, and it was #1 on the subreddit, or #2. It was one of those. I don't remember. Either way, that was incredible to me. I still have a screenshot saved of what my client looked like after that video went viral, because back in the day when the chat was all at the bottom instead of in a vertical list, the chat things were so small you couldn't even see the lights next to people's names saying they were online or AFK because there were so many of them, and I had never seen that before. I felt so freaking cool, man. I felt like I had finally figured out something that I was good at and I enjoyed. And the next, so like I said, it went viral overnight. That whole next day, I was like, wow, this feels awesome. I feel like I'm finally on the right track, because that was one of my problems doing the amateur stuff, is I couldn't figure out, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah, it's hard to get a feedback loop going, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so then 2 days after that clip goes viral, I have an email in my just personal Gmail account from Riot Games. Hey, I work at the LCS as a producer. Really like that clip we saw. Want to have a conversation about
it. Yeah, I mean, what's crazy to me about this story is it goes from like you're just hanging out doing these amateur things, trying to figure out like, am I even doing the right thing? Is this any good? What's going on? And then immediately you get, like, within just a 48-hour period, I guess, a message from Riot, which is wild. Just sort of the breakout moment immediately occurred, I guess.
Yeah, so it wasn't quite immediate, because, like I said, the grind started in summer of 2015, and it was April of 2016.
I just mean from that, like, the breakout moment hits.
Oh yeah,
and then it goes from like 0 to 100 in just there's no, like, I think for a lot of people who are in the space or content creators or whatever, it's like you get the slow burn where it's like, okay, I've got 100 subscribers on my YouTube channel, now I've got 1,000. Okay, this is building, it's building. For you were like, is this even, like, I think I'm casting well and it's good to do these things, but how do I even, then just immediately like that you get the email, which I think is really fascinating.
It was a very surreal experience. When I woke up the next day, I had to recheck the email to make sure it was real. And that started my interview process with Riot, which lasted 9 months.
Yes.
It was a 9-month interview process. It was over 20 interviews. It was very in-depth. I mean, you're going to be one of the 20 people globally that's the face of the English-speaking broadcast for League of Legends. So they got to put you through the ringer and make sure that you're the right guy for the job. And that's what started the whole interview process with Riot. I still kept doing things with House Party the entire time. I was still casting with House Party on a regular basis. And actually, as soon as I got the email from Riot, I was like, oh, shit. I was like, now that these guys are interested in me, I got to do more. Because I can't just be casting House Party every weekend. They got to see a guy who's on the grind, because that's the other thing that concerned me, is also around this time, after I got noticed by Riot, I finally thought I had enough, I don't know if the right word is clout or reputation points, or maybe I just saw myself as legitimate enough to send Zyrene a DM.
Yeah.
Because Zyrene did a lot of caster training content stuff back then. And so I sent him a DM, and he was like, yeah, sure, I'd be happy to do some VOD review stuff with you or whatever. I'm going to add you to a Skype group, because this was still back when that was the main method of communication. And so I get thrown in this Skype group with like 15 other amateur casters in there. And these guys are all talking about like the ESLs they've done and the different events they've worked. And I'm sitting here like, holy cow, I'm in way over my head. I was like, there's me, and then there's these guys that have all been doing it for a couple years, and they are doing real events, and they're actually getting paid for it. I've still never been paid for anything at this point.
Yeah.
And I felt completely out of my element. So I was like, you know what? Riot's expecting me to be one of these guys. I don't even know who to talk to from an ESL. So I got to make my own something. And as fortune would have it, a couple of months later, I find something. And the thing that I end up finding is Demacia Cup. It doesn't have an English broadcast. And Big Fat LP posts on the League of Legends Reddit one night. He was like, why the fuck is there no English broadcast for this? I watch Demacia Cup and gamble on it, and I want to watch an English broadcast when I do it. Where's this at?
Yeah.
And so as soon as I saw that thread, I was like, that's it. That's what I'm doing. And so I taught myself how to use OBS, how to set up a stream. I grabbed the feed from the Chinese broadcast, muted it, and cast it over to Demacia Cup in English. I didn't know if that was legal. I didn't know if that was allowed. I didn't know if I was about to get a cease and desist letter from China's best lawyers. But I knew that I had about $200 to my name, so even if they tried to sue me, it wouldn't matter anyway.
Yeah. It's like,
so
here's the money from the landscaping I did last week with my dad. You know, it's
yeah. I can give you my mulching shovel if you want it. It's a nice shovel. You're not going to get much out of me. I don't have a lot to give. So I started doing that, and that popped off. That got, for a stream that had never been live before, that had 2,000 to 3,000 viewers the whole time. And that was incredible to me. And so I started doing, I did Demacia Cup. After Demacia Cup, I did the open qualifiers for NA and EU Challenger. I did pros playing solo queue in boot camp and prep for Worlds. None of this existed. Nobody.
And were you just like co-streaming it essentially? Like before co-streaming was a thing, you were just sort of grabbing the feeds and casting over it?
I just grabbed the feed, muted it, and cast it over it.
Yeah.
And because it was one of those things, I was like, I wouldn't know who to ask permission for anyway. So it's one of those things where, you know, sometimes you hear the phrase, it's better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Yeah.
So I was like, if this is really like against TOS and it's awful, I'm sure I'm going to get some cease and desist or somebody saying, hey, cut that shit out. But I just went for it. I was like, I don't know how to proceed other than doing this, and I can't just sit here and wait. I have to go.
So then what was that final moment? So you go through 9 months of talking to Riot, and then eventually they send you the offer letter. So what happened next? Because then you had to move to California and all this stuff. So I assume like this was a very big moment for you, a big event as well.
So I'm not going to take away from the theatrics of this, especially because you're already invested in the story with how you said it feels like it comes from the big screen. So I have to give you the theatrical version of this moment.
Sure.
So the final step in the interview process is they fly you out to LA and you have like an interview gauntlet with people face to face.
I've done that before, yes.
Yeah, like 6 or 7 interviews there, right? And so then I fly back. I'm like, okay, I think it went pretty well. All right. And then you're waiting for the call back. And I was scheduled to have a call with the head producer of the LCS. And he was like, hey, it's not going to be a long call. It's only going to be about 15 minutes. And I was like, okay, so this is the yes or no call.
Right.
And so I remember I told my mom and dad, I was like, hey, the call with Riot today is scheduled for 5 p.m. So if you need me for anything, please don't like come knock on the door or open the door or anything like that. I'm going to be in a call. And they're like, okay, that's understandable. And so I get in that call and he just hits me up and he's like, hey, just wanted to keep this short and sweet. We want you on the team for the LCS in 2017. We want to fly you out here and have you ready to go for spring split. If you are keen for that, then we'll send the contract over immediately. You can get it signed and we'll get you out here. And I was very composed. And I said, that sounds fantastic. I can't wait to work with y'all. We're going to create some really cool stuff. He said, I think so too. All right, you have a good day. We'll be sending stuff over shortly. And he hung up. And so as soon as he hung up, I closed all my internet tabs. I closed Steam, anything that might be able to make noise. I turned it all off. And then I turned the volume on my speakers to 100. And I turned the inherent volume on my computer to 100. And I went on YouTube and I found the Sweet Victory song from SpongeBob, the one from the band.
Yes, I absolutely. That's my favorite SpongeBob episode. Yes.
And I just slammed the space bar to press play, and I sat back in my chair. I let the back of the chair down like this, and I just sat here like this for the whole duration of the song. Because after all that time, I did it. I made it. And that was one of the most incredible feelings of my life, and I will never forget that moment, pressing play on Sweet Victory and sitting back in my office chair in my bedroom, the second door down on the left at the end of my parents' hallway. That was awesome.
I'm sure they must have known when they heard you blasting Sweet Victory that the call had gone well.
They did. When I walked out of the room, they were both standing there waiting, and they were grinning real big, and they gave me a big old hug. And yeah, I feel like they were pretty aware of what happened when the walls were shaking because the music is so loud. Because I had a nice bass on that speaker back home, so that thing was thumping.
Yeah, something you can't have in L.A. When everybody lives in apartments and they're all close to each other. But when you have a house that is pretty distant from where your cornfield is on the other side, you can blast music.
It's not too much of an issue.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So you then had to move. Okay, so this is actually something I really enjoy. So you go from, because I've grown up in Southern California my whole life, right? And originally from San Diego area, moving to LA, it was kind of like a gradual increase in the amount of people that were around me and traffic and all this stuff. But I don't know how much time you'd spent in like big cities. You even said like a smaller college. So I'm curious what it was like for you transitioning, just for culture shock and all that.
So it was a wild ride, I will tell you that. I had been to big cities before. I had been on school trips to places like Chicago, Washington, D.C. It's not like I had never seen a skyscraper in person.
Right.
But it was not normal life to me by any way, shape, or form. So one anecdote that I will give you in terms of the culture shock, I remember when I first got out here and I went to my first day at Riot. And, first day is mostly just getting acclimated to the space, setting your computer up, becoming familiar with the people you're going to work with. So, 5 o'clock rolls around, it's time to leave. I remember walking out of the LCS studio that day, Travis, and I saw all the cars like sitting still because of rush hour traffic.
Yeah.
And I just remember out loud, I just said, no way. I thought rush hour was a Hollywood thing. I thought they did it in movies as an over-exaggeration.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
like hamming it up, just being like, oh my God, the cars don't even move. They don't. And that blew my mind. I had never seen that before, ever. And remember, I flew out to LA at the beginning of 2017, so I would have been 26.
Right.
So in 26 years, I had never seen an actual full-stop rush hour traffic situation.
Yeah.
And that was incredible to me. And then all sorts of other stuff too. Like before moving out here, I had never used chopsticks before. And so my buddies that I met the first couple of weeks at Riot, they were like, hey man, you want to go to KBBQ? And I remember saying, it's like, what's KBBQ? I was like, I know barbecue, but what's the K for? They're like, oh, it's Korean barbecue. It's similar. It's like this big social thing. You put the food in the middle of the table and you cook it right in front of each other, and it's really tasty. I was like, yeah, sure, sounds great. And we go there and they bring us chopsticks. And I didn't know that when you get the chopsticks, they're stuck together.
Right.
Break them apart. And so I remember looking at my buddy. I was like, hey, man, my chopsticks are stuck. He was like, no, they're not. That's how they come in the package. So I learned how to open the chopsticks. And I swear all those guys probably still got 5 or 6 videos on their phone of this very white dude from Cornfield, Ohio, trying to figure out how to use chopsticks for 45 minutes before getting the angles right.
If it makes you feel better, in 2012, I went to Korea with Shox, and she did not know how to use chopsticks either. And I unfortunately don't have the footage anymore, but I have somewhere like a Zubu Frost players teaching her how to use chopsticks for the first time, and it's very endearing. So I think an esports rite of passage for so many people to learn, especially Westerners, to learn how to use chopsticks. Yeah. That's fun though.
I'm pretty good now. I got the hang of it after a few years here, but man, that first dinner was.
I mean, I feel like LA, there's so much Asian food, so much people using chopsticks. You end up picking it up pretty quickly. Was it weird for you walking into the studio and like meeting Kobe and Freak and all these people and like getting makeup from Cass put on your face? It's sort of like this whole process.
That was completely surreal. Even back during the interview process, I'll rewind this a little bit just to cover this whole thing from front to back. During the interviews, one of the middle interview, like after you got through the first 10 or so of them, the next interview is an actual practice cast, and it's a cast, and it was with Jat, and I'm like, holy cow, man! I literally walked into that interview with this mindset. I was like, there is no way that I am good enough to cast with this guy. So what I gotta do is be a sponge. If he tells me I'm shit, I got to ask him why and try to learn as much as I can from this dude. Because I got a 30-minute game with him, and whether or not I'm good or bad, I just got to take as much away from this as I can. And so I just tried to brace myself for that. I did the same thing when I had another interview cast with Kobe, and then during my in-person interview with Riot, one of those interviews in the middle of the gauntlet was literally just sitting in a room with Freak and Jat talking about casting.
Yeah.
And that was crazy. And it was also the first time I had seen Freak not in a suit. He was wearing a Sesame Street shirt that said "Raised on the Street."
Yeah, his apparel choices are very casual outside of the. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the casters are so, but I think Freak in particular.
I mean, I'm the same, right? Like I wear band T-shirts and stuff like that all the time. But I remember that was really surprising to me. I still remember the Sesame shirt from Freak because it surprised me because I had never seen him in a suit before, or not in a suit before. And yeah, so then actually working with those guys, sitting down beside them, just sort of shooting the breeze back and forth, talking about stuff. Getting makeup was a strange experience. I did theater for 1.5 years in college, so I was used to a little bit of makeup that my friend put on me because she was in theater and she knew how to do it, and I had no idea what I was doing. Right. But like the full on makeup, very different experience for me. So there was a whole lot to get used to. It was really just trying to take it all in there at the start and realize like, hey, I actually made it. And I still remember the first or second day I was there, our caster manager, coordinator, just general everything. She was like, hey, we need you to come into the wardrobe room. We got to get measurements done to see like if we got to get new kinds of shirts or suits for you, which ones will fit you, whatever. And she puts the measuring tape around my neck. And I still remember what the first thing she said. She goes, damn, you got a big old neck. It's like, yeah, almost all my shirts I have to pick whether or not I want them to fit in the neck or the body.
Yeah.
And that's why I actually have custom made, like the shirts and suits that I wear on LCS are often custom made ones that have a larger neck because I have a medium to large, depending on what brand it is, frame. Yeah. But my neck is an XL to a double XL. So my neck's just huge.
Yes. Well, maybe from training from all the practice of casting and stuff, it's just gotten thicker over time. So then these past 4 years, it's so funny because it's been about 4 or 5 years, I guess, given the timing that you've told me.
4 years, yeah. This is the start of the fifth one.
It feels so much longer. It feels like you've been just a member of the LCS for so long. It's funny to think that it's been just a relatively short time, speaking within the broader time of the league. What have these been like for you? Because I've noticed like your stock has just risen dramatically over the course of all these years. Especially, I feel like in the past 2 or so years, people have really, I feel like every day I'm opening Reddit and there's a CaptainFlowers appreciation thread. So, what has this time been like for you?
It's been honestly just a wild ride. I never expected that this would be where life took me. Like, thinking back to the guy sitting in his freshman dorm room with his buddies playing League of Legends with that janky computer with the extra fan taped to it with a sock. I never imagined I would be casting the LCS. That was incredible. And I just, the attitude that I tried to do the whole time is like, just remember, like, take it one step at a time, do the best that you can. You're going to screw it up, so make sure you learn how to fix it. And It's been incredible, honestly. I was very fortunate that I had a really positive reception because, like in the past, a lot of people have, when somebody new shows up into a broadcast scene, a lot of times, man, they catch holy hell from Twitch chat and everybody else, and it's a rough time. But Twitch chat and the league community at large seem to have a pretty positive response to me at the beginning. I think one thing that did help with that is that I was always like a community person since I was discovered on Reddit, and I came from like the smaller amateur community, like the House Party 5v5 thing, and all my friends through college played League of Legends. Like I wasn't some guy who was just, I want to cast League of Legends because League of Legends is the biggest game in the world. I was the guy, I wanted to cast League of Legends because League of Legends was such a huge part of my life since 2009. Like, and I honestly think that's one reason that I've excelled so much as a caster. I think to be a good caster, you've got to be invested in the game beyond just wanting to make it a job. You've got to really love the game.
So one thing that I've noticed is that despite all this love from the community, you seem very self-critical at times, even on social media. Like I remember, I think you were sick for Worlds 2 years ago, and you couldn't cast for a lot of it, and you seemed to be like very apologetic to the community, like you'd let them down. Even it seemed like somewhat frustrated with yourself. I've seen this a lot, so I'm kind of curious. Like, you don't tend, I think, to show a lot of this during your streams, obviously during cast or whatever, but I see this sometimes on social media. I see you feeling very maybe frustrated with yourself or self-critical. I'm kind of curious, like what is that? What kind of goes on in your mind? Do you have frustrations with yourself around that, or?
So this is something I didn't used to like to talk about this at all. Mental health type stuff is something that I've become a lot more vocal about over the course of the past year and a half or so, especially in lockdown world, just because it's like everybody's struggling right now. It doesn't feel taboo, but I've always been incredibly hard on myself. I am my own harshest critic. It has contributed to a lot of my successes because I don't accept anything under what I think is excellence. But at the same time, if I get a 99, I'm asking myself, why wasn't that a fucking 100, right? Why is that not perfect? And especially when it's something completely out of control like that. Because I remember what you're talking about. It was Worlds 2019, and it was because it was in Europe, and I remember we landed there, and I was fine when we first landed, and I got to do the first 2 games that I was scheduled to cast for group stage, and my voice was giving out so bad after the second game. That was the only time I've ever had to be pulled off the desk in the middle of a set.
Yeah.
And those 2 group stage games were the only 2 games that I casted the entirety of Worlds. I spent the rest of that Worlds sick with a fever and a horrible case of bronchitis in my hotel room. The only thing every day I would leave to go to the market. I would buy a 2-liter of orange juice. I would buy some sort of like cold sub or just something to eat that I could put in the fridge if I didn't eat it all immediately, and then I would go back to my hotel room.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And it was really rough for me, man. I'm not going to lie about that. I was beating myself up every day. Why did this have to happen now? Why during Worlds? For Christ's sake, pick any other. Put it on my birthday. I don't care.
Right.
Just don't do it here. I was so mad. I was so frustrated the entire time. And, obviously that doesn't do me any good. It's not like I could have changed anything by getting mad enough. But it does feel bad because, in League of Legends, Worlds is the apex. It's the summit. It's what... If you're in the League of Legends broadcast world, that's it, right? That's the biggest event of the year. And to have to miss out on it because of something like that, man, it just felt horrible. I hated it. So, yeah, in situations like that, I do criticize myself harshly. And in general, I've tried to take a more constructive approach when I feel that very heavy criticism coming on. For instance, in the first week of games here, just, this split here in 2021, I thought that my Friday games were good, but I thought that my Sunday games were bad. And so I literally hopped on my own personal stream on Monday, and I was like, hey, we're doing a casting review. I think I'm shit, and I'm going to find out if I am. And so I literally just for 4 hours did casting review in front of a couple thousand people, just being like, this was good, that was okay, this is terrible, this was good, this was good. And it's just, I'm trying to take a more constructive approach to these types of things these days, but it is something that is one of my things that I constantly have to always be aware of and working through is it's fine to be critical of yourself, but you have to make sure that it's constructive criticism.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you just start beating yourself down. And that's the hole that I've found myself in the past, and I'm trying to work on dealing with better.
Are you at least able to recognize how much achievement and sort of incredible how incredible the story is that you've told me, right? Because I look at it this way, Flowers. I look at it and I'm like, when was the last time somebody joined the LCS broadcast that had like no connections beforehand, right? Like, obviously, wonderful people that have joined the LCS this year, but a lot of them have been in the scene for a very long time. It's very unusual that somebody just like grinds it out, makes it to the big leagues, and then finds rampant success once they get there, right? Like, you're one of the most celebrated casters in the scene. And so I'm curious if, like, even though you're being very critical of yourself at times, are you able to recognize this and be like, wow, I'm a badass. Look at what I've done.
It is something that does sort of get lost in those moments where I'm being hypercritical of myself. It is something that I work hard to try to remind myself, hey, you've done the world final. Hey, they gave you a trophy this past year saying that you're best play-by-play in the business. Like, those sorts of things, I do try to work and use those as anchors to keep myself grounded when I get really down on myself and feeling like I'm not good enough or I'm not doing enough, is to remember, hey, you've done some pretty big stuff considering you've only been in esports for 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. I won't lie to you and tell you that I'm always able to keep those things in mind and keep everything in perspective, but it is something that I try to work on. It's just one of those day by day types of things, man, trying to keep it all in line.
Well, one thing that has really exploded in the past year or so is your stream. I
Yes.
feel like you went from streaming kind of casually, doing some fun stuff, to like now this is something that has had a ton of success. People really like your stream. You were doing all this these in-house castings at the end of last year. So I don't know if this was a thing where like you at some point in time decided like, hey, I want to have a successful stream as sort of like a side business. This is going to be a thing I'm going to do, or if it just grew organically and now you're here. I mean, what sort of was that path from, is opening up this other side of your career and your content creation, et cetera?
So I've always just loved entertaining. It brings me joy. Making people laugh, have a good time is fantastic to me. I love doing that. And streaming was another way to go about that. The history of the stream was, initially it was used for 2 or 3 or 4 broadcasts back in the day when I was still interviewing for like Demacia Cup qualifiers, that stuff I talked about earlier, right? And then it was gone. After I joined Riot, I didn't use that stream for about a year and a half. And then in 2018, I get a DM from a guy, and he says, how many retweets for you to cast one of my bronze solo queue games? And I told him 1,000. Because I was like, I'm not Kanye West or somebody. I'm not going to tell this guy you got to get 100,000 retweets or something. That'll never happen. But I figured 1,000 was very lofty, but somehow attainable. And then Mark Zimmerman and LS both retweet him, and he gets 1,000 retweets in like 24 hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that was a lot faster than I was ever anticipating. So I said, all right, fine. This is what people want to see. This is what we're going to do. We're going to cast a bronze guy playing League of Legends on his own solo queue. And so a week later, I had set it up. I made crappy graphics in MS Paint. I got Azale to come do the thing with me. And we did the bronze stream. We casted this guy playing 5 games of solo queue in bronze. And to this day, I am still so proud of that, because that was such a huge thing in the whole League of Legends community, not just esports. That bronze stream ended up having like 10 different threads on the front page of Reddit that day, because everyone was watching it.
Right.
There was one League of Legends streamer that had more viewers than me on that day, and it was Tyler1. The bronze stream was more popular than everything not named Tyler1.
Yeah.
And to me, that was incredible. There were so many memes born out of that thing. I was told the next day by a bunch of people that I ran into at Riot, half of Riot's offices had that up on a monitor, watching it in the background. I had a guy from Player Behavior walk up and say, hey, man, loved the bronze stream yesterday. That was awesome. And it even sparked a 2-hour conversation on why the name filter isn't good enough.
Right.
Because some of the names players had in the game were ridiculous. So the bronze stream became like the first post-Riot thing that I did, and man, people loved it. It was awesome. And so after that, though, we kind of didn't do a whole lot more with the stream. I saw it as a one-off at the time, and again, this was mid 2018 or whatever. And so then later on down the road, a little bit further, 2019 rolls around. I do a couple more random streams of just mostly 1 or 2 time things. And then we get to the point where we're in 2020 and lockdown happens. Everything grinds to a halt. No more social interaction. No more fun. No more friends. No more anything.
Yeah.
Sit at home. Here you go. And so I decided to just fire up the stream. I figured nobody would watch, because some people know this, some people don't. I don't play ranked anymore. I haven't played ranked League of Legends since Season 7. I just have more fun playing normals with my friends and goofing around. But I figured, if people are going to watch a League of Legends stream, they want to watch ranked. They want to watch somebody who's good. They want to watch somebody push for Challenger or something, right? So I was like, nobody's going to watch some stupid stream of a guy who only plays Skarner running around going 20-3 in normals because it's funny. But they did. I turned that stream on one day, and we got 500 viewers on the first stream. And I could not believe it. I was like, that is crazy. 500 people want to watch Skarner gaming. You guys know I only hit Q, right? I just run around in a circle. But the people liked it, and people thought it was entertaining, so I did it more and more. I did it regularly. And I remember my dad the whole time, after every time I streamed, he would send me a text message, get that damn subscribe button.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. He was like, you know how much money you're losing? He was like, I see people in this chat telling you they want to throw their money at you, and you're just saying, nah, I don't want to do it. He was like, go get the button. I was like, man, there's a lot of paperwork and technical stuff behind the scenes. He was like, I don't care.
To be clear, there's not that much paperwork and technical stuff, but
yeah. Objectively, there's not. But so anyway,
I think it's a 5-minute process. Flowers.
It's like an hour. You have to fill out the bank and tax stuff and whatever. But I eventually do that, and the first day of streaming, we got a couple hundred subs, like 300 or so, I think.
Yeah.
I was like,
I mean, that's significant money. Yeah.
Dad was right. And so streaming was something I thought I never had a chance.
Yeah.
Just like casting. I never thought I had a chance. And then it popped off. It started doing more. So I started streaming more regularly. And yeah, the stream has grown pretty incredibly up till this point. We're up to, I think it's close to 80, 90,000 followers now. And I can get over 1,000 viewers just doing any kind of streaming. And to me, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing.
I mean, I think what's really cool to me about that is oftentimes I feel like one of the blessings and the curses of becoming an LCS caster is that you've now hit the maximum accomplishment. Like, I know it's like, oh, well, you can cast worlds, but even that's like not always entirely in your control, because maybe, they want to put more LEC casters on because it's in Europe, stuff like that. And so it's kind of this interesting thing where you can always get better, but also there's not too many places for you to grow. You can't go and be like, now I'm a tier 1 LCS caster or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's cool to hear that you have found like another place in which you can continue to like strive and set goals for yourself, because it sounds like that's something that you as a person just really like doing, is like sort of setting goals and accomplishing things and making progress and all that.
I have to have that. It compels me to do more and be more. That was actually where I felt like I was hitting a wall for a long time so in 2018, that was the year I got to do the world final. And going into that, I was not in the conversation for world final, because that year, remember, the whole thing was done remote. The only for the final were people traveling to Korea to be there. And so only the people that were on the short list of being considered for the final were told to, get their passports ready and like have visas and shit like that ready to go to Korea. And I remember I had an awesome tournament. I was getting crazy amounts of positive engagement on Twitter and Reddit and everything else. It felt like every day that I casted something, there was another Reddit thread saying, hey, we really like this guy for this event. And so once we got to like the knockout stages of that tournament, one of our caster managers came up and talked to me and was like, hey, I don't want you to get overexcited on this. I don't want you to like think this is a done deal, but I do want you to do visa paperwork for Korea because you are in that conversation now. I was like, okay. I'll do that. And then after the quarterfinals were done, and they saw that I was able to hold up in a best of 5 environment, they were like, "You're not doing a semifinal because you are," or was I doing a semifinal? I don't even remember. Yeah, I can't remember the exact.
Sure.
All I remember is they're like, "You're doing the final," and that was my goal the whole time. Because when you're an amateur, the goal is to get noticed. Once you're noticed, the goal is to get in. Once you're in, the goal is to do like a playoff final or something like that. Be one of the big dogs, right? And then once you're able to do a playoff final, you're like, okay, let's take it up to the next level. Let's do international stuff. I want to be on MSI. I want to be on Worlds. And then once you get to Worlds, you don't want to just do Worlds. You want to do the World Final. And I did it. I did it in 2 years. November of 2016, I was flying out to LA to do my in-person interview gauntlet with Riot. November of 2018, I was flying out to Korea to do the World Final. And that felt like the greatest accomplishment I have ever achieved. I will hold that with pride for the rest of my life. But the other side of that coin is that now I won the game.
Yeah, it's like, where do you go from here?
I beat the game. The credits are playing. And it's not like I think that, I'm the best caster who ever lived and there's nothing I can do to improve or whatever. But you still have that feeling of like, where's that big lofty goal? Where's that at? And so that was kind of that was like a weight that I was dragging around for all of 2019. I thought 2019 was probably my weakest professional year. And a big reason for it was just because of that mental haze that I had the whole time of not knowing what my goal was.
Right.
I didn't have a long-term goal. And then, we got to 2020, and with the world changing so suddenly with COVID and lockdowns and all of this stuff, that just sent my mental into a tailspin. And I was trying to figure out, I was like, I've got to have something to work towards. I can't just sit here staring at Reddit or the wall or listening to the same songs over and over again on YouTube, just waiting for the next day to show up. So streaming sort of became an outlet for me to at least feel it was a creative outlet. It was a growth outlet. It was just something that I enjoyed doing, that people enjoyed being a part of. So it's something I was just super happy to jump into. If I look back at 2020 was a really bad year for me. Like, I had to go through a lot of mental stuff dealing with lockdown and everything like that. 2020 was a dark place. And I don't want to get into the details of that on this interview, but the one big shining light that came out of it was it catalyzed me being able to expand more into like the streaming and content creation stuff and find out how much I enjoy that.
Well, I think it's interesting because you are, as you said, you break so many stereotypes, both in caring about things like physical fitness and sort of being a Chad, I believe is the term, and then also being into so much nerdy stuff. And I assume that like last year was probably tough for you because there's people I like to go out. I like to do a lot of stuff. I think the same. I always go to these events, and you're always there. Whenever all the LCS players are getting drunk on a Saturday night before their games the next day, you're always there with. No, I'm just kidding. But I do see you always hanging out with people like Mateus and like the crew, other casters when they go out, etc. You're always there, and so I can assume that like not having that connection last year, as you have to stay in, having the stream probably allowed you to at least connect with a lot of people in a different way, but perhaps in at least some way that you couldn't really under normal circumstances. Yeah,
it's a release valve is what it is. It allows me to have human interaction, because that's one of the things that was really dragging me down is, part of being a public figure in anything is you're going to have people just be unnecessarily rude, mean, spiteful, hateful, whatever, just because they have nothing better going in their lives and they're stuck with an anime profile picture.
Yeah.
Those people started wearing me down for the first time in my life in 2020. Because normally, every other time, you get some rude guy talking some trash on the internet and you're just like, whatever, I don't care about him. You go talk to your friends, you live your life. It happens. But there was no removal from that.
Yes.
There was no way to just brush it off, because that's the only interaction you have if you're stuck at home, is just these jerks on the internet. And even if you still have your friends that are still your people and you're still talking to them online and whatever, it's not the same.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that same like cleansing property where you can just sort of level back to normal and feel good about stuff. So I was getting so just beat down and worn down by dealing with crappy people on the internet. And even if it wasn't people being lousy directly to me, it just seemed like all of 2020, every news headline was just always the world's getting worse, everything's on fire, and man, it was bringing me down. And so streaming is one of those things that helped me say, even if there's all this bad crap out here, at least I still have this, which is good. At least I still have these people that I can like reach out and share Skarner memes or in-house casting or whatever else with, and it's fun.
Yeah.
And it sort of did bring me that little bit of rejuvenation back to be able to wipe away some of those nasty experiences and remember that the world's not all just shittiness.
So now we've gone full circle back to the beginning of this conversation, which is about you deciding to go freelance with Riot. So I'm kind of curious, like what made that decision for you, or what made you consider that? Because it sounds like you want to do even maybe more streaming or really start to build out all this in addition to the casting that you've been doing.
Yeah, that's 100% true. So what I'm looking at with this, what inspired me to make this decision is, again, feeling like after I did the world final for League of Legends, that's the ultimate achievement, right? That's the crown on the king's head for League of Legends casting. So the way I look at it is like this. And I was thinking about this earlier because I had to grab a shower before I came on the show here. I wanted to make sure that I was feeling all fresh. Even if y'all can't actually smell me, it's in the mental, So, while I was in there, I was thinking, what is a good metaphor to use for this specific situation? Because I know we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And you know what I thought about? I thought about Eevees from Pokemon. Because when you're a caster, you are an Eevee, just the little basic one that doesn't do anything. Well, I'm not saying that casters don't do anything. Don't think that I don't.
I think Eevees also do things.
Right, but mostly it's tackle or tail whip. And when the Eevees want to specialize and go into be bigger, badder asser Eevees, what they do is they're not like a normal Pokemon and they can branch, right?
Right.
Instead of the normal Pokemon that goes A, B, C, Eevee can pick which one of the ones it wants to be. And that's what you see most casters doing, right? So some of the casters do what you see like Monte Cristo has done, where he goes into more like production type of stuff. He's got the whole Flashpoint thing with CSGO like that. It's more into like a managerial production type of role,
right.
And they evolve further into the broadcast part of the broadcast talent and like managing and overseeing that whole thing. Managing and oversight of projects and people is not a strong suit of mine. It's not a thing that I particularly enjoy doing either. So we're not evolving into that Eevee. We can take the Firestone and give that to somebody else. We're not going to use it. And then one of the other options is casters expand into different games. Instead of just being a League of Legends caster, you're a caster for XYZ. Now, unless those games are all from the same company, naturally you would have to be a freelancer to do that. And one of the things that I thought, and this was one of the things that helped me make the decision, is for the longest time, Riot Games was Riot Game, and they had League of Legends. And then all of a sudden, we get the L10 announcement that shows all the new stuff coming out, and there's all these new projects. And then like the first big like full-on not League of Legends IP comes out, and that's Valorant, right? And Valorant, man, had so much social media storm around it. Valorant had every content creator that was a content creator creating content was pumped about Valorant. Valorant was the thing. And one of the things that I always felt as a mark on my permanent record, I guess, in League of Legends, is one thing that I'll never be able to get is I'll never be able to be one of the originals. No matter what I do, no matter how good I am, no matter how much I achieve, I will never be able to be part of that nostalgia that so many people feel when they first discovered League of Legends, like back in the day when League of Legends was really, because for a lot of people, League of Legends was like this first big Western esports experience, right? Because a lot of people in the West didn't have the same, like StarCraft wasn't here what it was in Korea, right? So League of Legends just became this huge thing for so many people, this cultural phenomenon, and I wasn't a part of that at its inception. And so no matter what I do, how high I climb, how much I achieve, I will never be able to be a part of that. And so seeing Valorant release, I was like, oh, well, this could be a really cool opportunity to be a part of something from its inception like that. That could be really sick. So this is where I'm thinking about, oh, is this the Eevee that I want to be, right? And then when Valorant came out, I played some of it, and I just don't enjoy the genre. I don't like tactical shooters. I never played I was never interested in playing CS:GO. But then when Valorant came out, I was like, hey, I've played League of Legends for 10 years. Obviously, I think Riot makes good games. I like the fact that the characters have individual abilities and stuff like that instead of just being everybody's the same soldier.
Right.
But then when it came down to it, I just don't enjoy the core gameplay loop of tactical shooters. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier about how I think if you want to be an S tier caster, you've got to love the game, not just from a point of I'm talent, I'm a broadcast, I can cast this well because I can talk quickly and know it, but from like, yo, when I go home, I play this game because it's fun. And I didn't feel that. I don't have that attachment to Valorant.
So what EV is what EV evolution is the casting Valorant or other games EV?
That's the Waterstone.
Okay.
So that's the Firestone is production. The Waterstone is casting other games. And then the last one is sometimes you see casters go on to do more content creation, individual brand building, and just sort of making more of a name out of themselves.
Well, you're missing. There's one more that you're forgetting.
Which one?
Which is coaching or working at teams.
Wait, yeah. Oh, that one I kind of file into. He's like that EV's a subdivision of the one that goes on to produce.
Okay. Like, so behind the scenes is
behind the scenes. He's in with production and management because you're still managing, but instead of managing the show, you're managing a team.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, well, we'll put Monte Cristo and Papa Smithy are the same EV. They're both the Flareon.
Is Jat also that EV?
Man, Jat has done so much stuff now. Jat is like
yeah.
But yeah, Jat would also be a Flareon.
Okay.
Yeah. And then like I'm friends with the guys from Overwatch, like Bren and Sideshow and those guys.
Yeah.
And those were another thing that let me know that trying to double dip into Valorant would not be the thing for me, because when I saw like Bren and Sideshow on Overwatch, they were playing Overwatch 8 hours. I'm saying the wrong word. I'm getting myself confused talking about I know them from Overwatch and they're playing Valorant. So even while they're still casting Overwatch, they're playing Valorant like 8 hours a day. They're studying up on who's moving in from CS:GO, who's moving in from Overwatch, what's going on with the teams. And I was like, I'm not as invested in this as they are. And I'm doing a disservice to everybody watching the show if I'm trying to say that I am on the same level of investment and like involvement in this scene, because I'm not. So those guys they're the Vaporeons, right? They're in the different games. They're
so what is the last one is Volteon, right? Is that
Jolteon?
That's right.
Yeah. Jolteon was the second Pokemon I ever got to level 100 back in Pokemon Blue. The first one was
and that's a sign that you're going to become a Jolteon in this metaphor, I guess.
So yeah, the final piece of this completely unnecessary Pokemon metaphor is the third path that I see people go down is you do more of your own individual like streaming, content creation, brand type stuff. One of the ones that comes to mind immediately for me is probably the biggest and most successful one that a lot of people watching might not know much about because he's not an English streamer or commentator, is Ebi. Like from the Spanish scene, Ebi was the biggest League of Legends commentator. He decides to stop being an official commentator. He starts streaming all the time, pulls in huge numbers. He was a part of G2 last year, but now he's left G2 on good terms to go start his own org for streaming and content creation and stuff like that. And that's like an example of just stretching out and doing more of your own type of content stuff. And I enjoyed doing streaming so much that's what I'm looking towards now, is doing more streaming, doing more content creation, doing more collaborations with orgs and teams and individuals. I can't wait to make more stupid stuff with Ovely, man. I tell you what, we're unleashed now. There's going to be if we get through this year without some absolutely ridiculous CaptainFlowers and Ovely collaboration, it's going to be a crime.
I'm looking forward to it. I've enjoyed your horror streams before, so
yeah, those are great. I'm still trying to get her. See if you can help me convince her. I want to go to a real like haunted insane asylum or a hospital or something in real life, but she told me that she would probably die just from panic.
So just go to a spooky. You want to go to some spooky place and
like an actual spooky place, not like a haunted house that you pay $10 to go in and they jump scare you.
Oh, you want to go to an actual spooky
like an
place.
Actual spooky place. Yeah, with night vision goggles and stuff. I think that would be super fun.
Yeah, that sounds terrifying. But
that's what Ovely said.
But I think maybe the community will rally to her to your cause to try to make this happen.
Hopefully, but that's what I'm looking at, and that's That's one thing that I do like to clarify here is one thing I saw in the Reddit thread where they were talking about me going freelance and stuff like that. They're like, oh, are you looking to branch out into a bunch of other games? And the answer is no. I'm not looking to become like a premier caster for CSGO or Valorant or anything in the fighting game community or something like that, like I am for League of Legends. I'm not looking to become a caster for any other game like I have been for League of Legends. I consider myself as one of the like premier guys for League of Legends. Like I'm involved with all the international events, all the big playoffs and stuff like that. I don't have the desire to be that level for other games. That doesn't mean I have no interest at all in working with other games, like doing community events, bronze stream-esque type stuff seems like a lot of fun, but I'm really looking to expand on the individual brand stuff, like the streaming, the content, the collaborations, and that's sort of what I'm going to be focusing on out in my non-LCS time this year, is just doing as much with that as I can. And of course, it'll be much better once the world can get back to normal a little bit. I've told people that if I can manage to figure out how to do it, one day once the world's back to normal, I want to take a bird scooter and I want to wear a streaming backpack on a ride along Venice Beach and just clown around with Twitch chat. I think that would be awesome. But yeah, I'm just trying to keep everything as a possibility. I never want to say no to any idea before I think it through and really figure out what to do with it. Like right now, I'm working. One of the first jobs that I got here as a freelancer is doing League of Legends Twitch Rivals, which is going on right now, right? It's like a whole month-long thing. And because this Twitch Rivals is a month-long thing instead of just a 2 or 3 day competition, it means that the teams are together and practicing over the course of a month instead of a week. Which means content.
It's true.
So that means I just hit these guys up and I'm just saying, hey guys, if you want your scrims casted, if you're okay with them being public, send me an invite. I will join in that lobby. You can use the casts for any of your own promo stuff or whatever. I'm here to do some scrims. And I've had a couple of people from a couple of different teams hit me up. They've been like, hell yeah, man, let's do it. And I've casted Twitch Rival scrims and people are loving it. The response from everybody in Twitch chat has been phenomenal. They're digging it. You get to have exposure to all the different streamers. Like we've had scrims from Tyler and Yasuo and Sanchovies and Lux and everybody in there. It's been great. So just always keeping my eyes open for new stuff to do, new stuff to be a part of, and new ways to make it. Like the other thing that I'm looking at here is how to make something that you aren't going to get somewhere else.
Right.
Why is watching this scrimcast better than watching anybody else do a scrimcast? And I think it's because I am a world's caliber commentator, just shooting the breeze and having a good time.
Yes.
Watching some scrims. And it's an angle that I think not many other people are able to provide, and I'm having a ton of fun with it.
Well, you can provide the quality of, an LCS or Worlds caster while also talking about Jack's helicopter dicking. Is that the term that you use? I believe that's the term that you use.
Oh, yeah. So that was the clip. For anybody who never saw it, back on Reddit and the guy who made the title was honestly the MVP. Yeah. Because the title was very ominous. It was like CaptainFlowers discusses his casting struggles.
Yeah. Yes.
And then you open the clip and it's me talking about how normally it's really easy to switch off the swearing and the vulgarity and stuff like that. Because if anybody who's ever been on my stream, my LCS persona is very much professional, but I talk on my stream like I do to my friends. I swear like a sword. Right. And so the guy was asking, is it hard to turn that off? And I was explaining, yes, or no, it's not hard to turn it off most of the time. But yes, there's some exceptions. And the big exception is, ever since I've played League of Legends, I have called Jax's E the helicopter dick. And so when I always think of the most creative language and ways to express things happening in a game, particularly if it has to do with something unique to a character. Like if Yorick kills a guy, you don't want to just say Yorick killed that guy. You want to make some sort of reference to the fact that he put him in the ground or dug the grave for him or something, right? It just makes it more lively. It makes each broadcast, each situation feel a little bit more unique. But I can't do that with Jax because the only thing I can ever think of is here comes the helicopter dick. And there's no way that would fly on official broadcast. So I have fun being able to do that kind of garbage on my own stream where I don't have to be as professional. So yeah.
Well, we're running low on time, but I am kind of curious. Is there a world where, especially as you're doing more of the streaming stuff, maybe you keep casting for a while, and then one day Flowers, who doesn't need to be in LA potentially to stream, decides to hang up his, I guess, casting microphone with the LCS, take his stream, buy a big old house back in Ohio near your family, and go home and stream from there?
Anything's a possibility. I don't want to, because what you're talking about with a situation like that would be years down the road.
Right.
And one thing that I've come to learn, and this goes back to what you were talking about earlier about you hope that I recognize the incredible journey that I've had so far, is that planning multiple years into the future will quickly find itself unwound by just life being life.
Right.
Things are wild. I mean, January 26th, 2021, January 26th of 2016, I had never casted a game of League of Legends. I had never thought about casting a game of League of Legends. I was still just moving some dirt. And that's a 5-year difference. So honestly, January 26th, 2026, I have no idea what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I'm going to do is make sure that I always have something I'm working towards. I always have my best foot forward. I'm passionate about what I'm doing, and I'm just trying to have as much fun and make sure everybody else has as much fun as they can. That's, as long as I'm doing that, I don't think I'll lead myself too far astray.
Well, good words to end this on. I obviously we've talked for a very long time, but I'm kind of curious if there's anything you want to say to all the fans out there who've been watching your stream for the past year, cheering you on Reddit and on social media, and are just excited for the future and what your new career transition holds.
Honestly, I'm excited, and I hope that you all are just as excited too. Like, big shout out to all my friends and family and everybody who's been believing in me this whole time. Big shout out to the people on Twitter that just take the time out of their day to tweet something positive at someone because they enjoyed it. I know that it's very easy to get lost in the sauce of everything feeling so negative and down and lousy these days. But man, sometimes you just read a tweet about how a guy really liked your stream and it made his evening, and that just, man, that feels fantastic. So to all the fans out there who are loving it, thank you guys so much for the support. You all are awesome, and without you, there would literally be no point in doing it. So for every single person out there who's supported this, who believes in this, who's a part of this, you guys are the best. I'm going to keep trying to create bigger, badder, better shit for all of y'all until I'm not able to anymore, which won't be anytime soon. So I'm just trying to have the best possible time I can with it. Like I said, I'm not leaving LCS anytime soon, so you'll still be able to see me on there all the time, along with the extra streams and content that we're going to be doing here. And I want my last big shout out to be to Travis in particular, because this interview was actually supposed to be recorded yesterday. I hit Travis up an hour before this interview was supposed to be recorded, and I said, Travis, I got some personal stuff that is dragging me down today. I don't think it's going to make for a good interview. Would you please be accommodating and move this to a different day? And Travis said, no problem. And I appreciate that so very much, man. I think this interview ended up so much better than it would have been if I was trying to straighten out all that garbage yesterday and come
it's
here
a win
and
for me too.
well.
Better content is good for me too. It's a good decision for both of us. But I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So yeah, big shout outs to you. Big shout outs to all the other fans, everybody at home. Like I say, I'm looking forward to doing more stuff, especially once we get rid of this Corona bullshit. I am so ready to go back to in-person events. I am so ready to meet people at events and recordings and venues and stuff like that. And for any person who's ever wondered about walking up and saying hello or getting a picture or something like that, you guys are what makes the whole job worth it. You guys are what makes it awesome. I love interacting with fans. It is literally my favorite part of the job, so please never be shy about any of that thing if you see me anywhere. Even if you see me in the Taco Bell, just walk and say, hey, yo, bro, you getting a burrito? I'll be like, hell yeah. And that's pretty much all I got.
Well, looking forward to seeing you again in person, and especially to travel and all that whenever we get a chance to, as soon as this stuff ends. Thank you again so much for doing the interview with me. It's so fun to hear so much of your story, stuff that I didn't know before. So I really appreciate it.
Happy to share it, man.
For everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things LCS right here on my YouTube channel. What was I supposed to say again? I know it was... Oh, yes! That's what I was supposed to say. I'm supposed to tell you about Alienware. You can go check them out at alienware.com/Travis. There's a link in the description below. You can use Travis 10 off Q4. Sometimes people tweet at me and they say, I can't find the code. The code is always in the description of these videos. So it does change from time to time. In fact, it might be becoming something new very soon. But Travis 10 off Q4, you can save 10% off your order of an Alienware computer. And thank you so much to Alienware for sponsoring this channel. Also, please subscribe to the channel because it's the only way I can gauge the progress of time in my life and what I'm accomplishing.